We are going to talk about the AIDS and HIV.
AIDS is a disease known by all but studied by few ones. Many know the problems of suffering it, but few ones know the origin, the development, methods of infection, or treatments. For it, our purpose is to try to investigate on these aspects, and this way to be able to explain them with clarity. We have to begin saying that the AIDS it is caused by a virus, the HIV, and that we speak about AIDS when the reaction of the organism is insufficient to attack the opportunist agents. Structure. We understand as a virus and a cellular organization that acts as a parasite. The virus doesn't present an own metabolism. That's why they need the enzymatical machinery of the cells that they parasite. The basic structure of the virus by means of which they parasite, they are the virions. The HIV is a virus ARN formed by a spherical particle of 80 or 100 nanometers, possess a mainframe in 3 caps. The first one, the core, constituted by an important protein, P24 or P25, as we can observe in green color. It possesses 2 ARN monocatenary chains. Very nearly there are enzymes like transcriptase inverse in blue, integrase in orange, and protease in red. The second one, nucleocapside icosahedrica. It is a very solid wrapper of protein, in the shape of almond that surrounds ARN of the virus, and close to another cap of more exterior protein called counterfoil. They form a powerful shield that they surround to the genetic material of the HIV. Between these 2 caps of protein it is found the protease. The third one, the bilipidic wrapper. There comes from the cell guest who infected previously. It is a membrane of 2 caps of lipids, with 72 copies of a protein known like GP120. The proteins GP120 are specific of the HIV. In this wrapper, HLA antigens locate class 1 and 2 of the cell infected. And across the same membrane, the viral glucoproteins project GP120 and GP41 that join the surface of the virus. Both proteins constitute the elements of union of the virus to the receptors CCR5 and or CXCR4 of the cell of the guest. Across a structural change in these recipients, they do that the terminal peptide of merger is inserted. The capsule of the virus being fused by the membrane of the cell, leaving clear track at the entry of the material of the core to the interior of the cell. Replication cycle. Cells to which affects. The AIDS affects white blood cells, specifically the helper T cells. They turn into factories for the AIDS virus, which destroys cells and leaves the main immune system affected, causing opportunistic infections develop freely. But HIV can also directly kill brain cells, causing encephalopathy. Union to the host cell. GP120 receptors bind to the CD4 coreceptors. This causes a structural change in the protein GP41 that makes the union to the coreceptor CCR5. This merger allows binding to the cell surface but inserting into the cell interior the terminal fusion peptide. Internalization and descapsidation. This internalization leads to entry into the cell's genetic material of the core, the RNA and a protein reverse transcriptase, and some proteins. The capsid of the virus fuse with the cell's transcription and integration genomics. Once the RNA is inside the cell, with the help of inverse transcriptase, goes on DNA. This DNA joins with the DNA of the cell, creating later ARN of the virus again. Synthesis of the RNA of the virus, assembly and budding. The RNA synthesizes the proteins GP160, POL and GAP. They are necessary to form the different parts of the virus. All of the virus parts come together and slowly exit outwards. By this way, we can get many copies of the virus.
And now I'm going to talk about the mechanisms of the transmission of HIV.
These are the adults and children living with HIV in 2008. The most part of the infected people live in sub-Saharan Africa, and it is followed by South and Southeast Asia. This is a global map. As we can see, as I said before, the most of the people is in Africa and Asia. The variations in these different areas of the planet are due to different factors. Socio-demographic, if the population is active, passive, young, old; cultural, such as religion or education; and economics and politics. Half of the infected people are women. The 60% of them live in sub-Saharan Africa, and they can buy medicines because they are too expensive for them. These are the cases have been noticed since 1996 in Spain, but the amount of new infected people have been reduced in the last years, as we can see in the image. The principal causes of the infection in Spain are the share of strings with drugs, homosexual relations, heterosexual relations, and the transfusion of blood and from mothers to children. In Spain, the 75% of the infected men have an average age of 37 years. Most of them are infected by homosexual relations, while women have an average of 34 years, and most of them are infected by heterosexual relations. The transmission of the virus is only effective through blood, semen, vaginal discharge, and with the ingestion of maternal milk, despite it is present in saliva, tears, bronchial secretion, bone marrow, and lymph nodules. So it is recommended not to share syringes if you are going to use drugs, and to use condoms in your sexual intercourse to prevent the infection of AIDS.
And now I'm going to talk about the diagnostic and treatment of the AIDS. In an HIV primary infection, the most common symptoms are fever, nodular growth, pharyngitis, lethargy, headache, maculopapular rash on the face, and lymphopenia, particularly CD4 cells. I'm gonna talk about the treatment now. The four goals of an antiretroviral therapy are clinical target, virological target, immune goal, and epidemiological objective. The clinical target. It is to increase the life expectancy and to improve the quality of life of those people who are infected by AIDS. The virological target. It's to reduce viral load to an undetectable level, as long as possible in order to prevent disease progression while limiting the development of resistance to ARVs. The immune goal is to restore and preserve immune function in normal. This is a quantitative component to maintain CD4 cells counts. It also implies the objective of preventing the infection of opportunistic pathogens. And the last one, the epidemiological objective, is to reduce HIV transmission to others. The starting of HIV treatment is the following one. It depends on three factors. The first factor is the symptomatology. Well, we have talked about it in the first part of this section. The second one is the HIV viral load, and the third one is the CD4 cells lymphocyte count. The CD4 lymphocyte count. If we have less than 350 cells in a cubic millimeter, it means the starting of the antiretroviral treatment. If the CD4 lymphocyte count is between 350 and 500 cells per cubic millimeter, it's initiated in patients with comorbidities. The comorbidities are such as cirrhosis, co-infection, or high CV. And if we have more than 500 cells per cubic millimeter, it defers the antiretroviral treatment. Sonia has given us some information about how does the virus act, and here we have some inhibitors that make just the opposite function. We have fusion inhibitors, entry inhibitors, NNRTI or protease inhibitors, integrase inhibitors, and maturation inhibitors. There are some available drugs too, but in the case of AIDS or the HIV, these drugs are just developing. We have not reached the point of having that treatment by drugs. In this image, the blue line describes the level of the antibodies which are going to deal with the AIDS. The green one gives us information about the viral charge, and the other one, the red one, shows the CD4 cells level. In the time axis, we can see the three phases: the start of the infection, the chronic replication period, and the accelerated phase of the infection. In AIDS patients, the probability of developing AIDS in 6 years is the one you can see in this graphic. We have the viral charge and the CD4 count, and you can see how the graphic changes. Unfortunately, the development of AIDS is like a train approaching a cliff. The viral load can be the train speed, and the CD count the distance to the point of danger. So what we have to do now is to fight AIDS.